Hey guys, my name's Handyman Graham. Welcome back to my channel. Today we have a really exciting and fun project for you guys. So we're combining some Ikea and some do-it-yourself elements to make one epic wall-mounted desk. I hope you guys really enjoyed my apartment makeover series on Alexandra's channel. It was so fun to make over 5 different spaces in my apartment. I don't know about you guys, but I got a little emotional at the end of the kitchen makeover.
Huh? I'm gonna cry.
So I've created so many DIYs for my own space and they're all holding up so well. The refrigerator doors, the bathroom mirror, the Murphy desk, the Resendes vinyl wrap, raccoon wood topper. Now I'm really excited to make some amazing DIYs for our very deserving recipients, starting with Hatley. Alexandra and I had a whole bunch of meetings about what we're gonna make for this space. Every single square foot that you can save is so important. So something that can fold up out of the way, but still looks great on the wall is kind of gonna be my goal here. It's always easier to put my ideas on paper so that I can visualize what I'm gonna be doing because it's so important to have a vision to start with. I'm gonna split this project up into 5 sections. The first section is gonna be building the Ikea units. The second is gonna be building the desktop, then the support pieces, then assembling everything together, and then finally the installation. The first thing we need to do is build the Ikea units. So while you can find the measurements to all Ikea stuff on their website, because I'm securing these together, I need to figure out what those dimensions are gonna be when they're together so that I can then build the desktop to the same dimensions. I'm attaching them side by side with some cabinet screws, and once it's assembled, I'm just putting them aside until I need them later on. So the next step is building the desktop. For the desktop, I'm gonna build it into 3 different sections. There's gonna be the flat desktop, there's gonna be a structural support backing piece, and then there'll be a wooden dowel that extends the entire width of the desktop that's gonna act as a hinge. I picked up some rough cut lumber from the same sawmill where I got the wood for my drop-down Murphy desk. So the first thing I gotta do is map out all the different pieces, and I'm cutting them down to size using the miter saw. The reason why I'm doing this is because I have a tiny little 6-inch joiner, and the rule of thumb for using a joiner is that the piece of wood should never be twice the length of the outfeed table. So while I do have these big long boards, I do need to cut them down so that I can use them on this small joiner. I'm then taking the board over to the thickness planer and I'm bringing the thickness down to 1.25 inches thick. So lastly, I'm using the table saw to flatten the last edge. Okay, so all the boards are milled down, they're nice and flat and square. First, I just have to use my biscuit joiner, put some biscuits in between these boards so that it's easier to glue together. They won't shift around. I'm now applying a whole bunch of wood glue to both surfaces. When you're gluing boards together, be sure to glue everything. Make sure there's no dry spots. Use a whole bunch of wood glue. The more wood glue you use, the better. You really wanna make sure all the edges are lathered up, including the biscuits. You don't want these boards to kind of separate in the future, so it's always important. As the glue is drying, we're gonna clamp everything together, and my tip for you guys at home is that when you do use clamps, be sure that you alternate like the orientation of the clamps. So like if you have one underneath the boards, then you have one on top, and that will just like prevent the boards from like cupping as they're getting squeezed together. In order to prevent this as well, I'm putting a board on top and underneath and clamping those boards together to kind of sandwich this glue up together. We want this desktop to be as flat as possible. Okay, so the boards are all glued together and I'm learning from my mistakes from last time when I made the Murphy table. I waited too long to fill all the holes and cracks with epoxy, so I'm gonna do that now as the glue is drying. Then when the glue is dry, the epoxy should be dry too, and I can take everything apart and I'll save myself a lot of time in the drying process. So I'm gonna just mix some epoxy together and just fill whatever cracks and knots I can find. So now I'm letting the epoxy and wood glue dry overnight. So it's the next day and I'm removing all of the clamps and those wooden support pieces that I sandwiched the desktop together with. I learned a really valuable lesson here, and that is to try to clean up the wood glue as much as possible before you clamp everything together. those support pieces kind of got glued together onto the desktop, and when I knocked them apart with my hammer, it kind of tore out some wood from the underside of the desktop. So before I can address the tear out on the underside of the desktop, I'm first gonna sand it down just to clean it up a little bit and just see where we're at. I'm gonna sand everything down from 60 grit sandpaper, and I'm probably gonna leave it at 80 grit for the time being. So I noticed that the tear out on the underside of the desktop is really deep. So first I'm cutting out little scrap pieces of wood, and I'm tracing the wood on the underside of the desktop so that I know what material I need to cut out. Next, I'm using my router to just carve out 1/4 inch of material. And I'm using my chisels to clean up the corners. I'm using some wood glue and clamps to hold everything together until the wood glue dries. You've probably noticed like little bow tie inlays on decorative tables or whatever, but I didn't want this to attract your eye to the underside of the table. Instead, I just wanted this to be like a nice little feature that you would notice if you took a closer look, but from a distance, you couldn't tell it's there. We've been working really hard, so it's time to take a break. So as many of you guys know, I love to drink coffee, and what better way to take a little break than to roast my own coffee in a little air fryer I have in the workshop. Look, I got my cooling tray here, all ready to go. Starting to smell nice, yeah. Alexandra got me a new air fryer for my kitchen makeover, so this one is now my designated coffee roaster. If you guys want to DIY roast coffee yourselves, there's plenty of places online that you can buy green beans from. So after the coffee cools down, I can bag the coffee in this craft paper coffee bag and save it for a later day. So that was a successful coffee roasting break. So next I can tackle the supporting back piece for the desktop. So for the backing piece, I'm cutting them down with my table saw and a little clamping jig just to give them like a little diagonal cut. And then I'm cutting them down to size using my miter saw. I'm then cleaning up these pieces with 60 grit to 80 grit sandpaper. People have asked me in the comments why I'm constantly drawing on the wood with a pencil, and the reason why is because I need to know where I've sanded and where I still need to sand. If I didn't use pencil to mark the wood, then I will have no idea where I've sanded. Some parts of the wood might be super sanded and other parts might not be sanded enough, so this is just make sure that everything is nice and consistent. So now I'm jumping back to the tabletop and I'm cutting it down to size using my track saw. I'm then giving this tabletop a little bit of character by rounding the top edge with a router and a roundover bit. And I'm angling the underside of the tabletop using a chamfer bit. Now that the tabletop is pretty much complete, I can now go back to the supporting piece. And before I glue everything together, I'm sanding everything down to 220 grit sandpaper. It's gonna be a lot easier to sand before it's glued together than after. So I'm covering the backing pieces with a liberal amount of blue painter's tape. The painter's tape will prevent glue from sticking onto the wood. I'm just trying to make sure the glue is in the seam, not on the surface, because we've already sanded everything together. Okay, so I had to leave a little bit early last night, so I didn't get to finishing the desktop, but what I gotta do now is I've got this like backing piece. It's all dried and glued up, and I just have to secure it to the desktop now. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna put some dowels in the bottom of this. So I got 7 dowels, and I'm gonna drill like a little pilot hole, I guess, if you will. And I'm gonna put a little finishing nail in the hole. And then I'm gonna take it over to the desktop and I'm gonna find out where exactly it needs to go. I'm gonna press down and it's gonna leave like a little imprint from the nail. And then I'll know that that's the center of the hole that needs to be drilled on the desktop. Oh, also, I'm drinking the coffee that I roasted yesterday and it actually tastes okay. It's severely under roasted. Like this is the color of it. It should be a little bit darker than that, but it's got some good sweetness to it. It's pretty good. So I'm applying glue to the dowels and to the edge of the supporting piece that's gonna come in contact with the desktop. In order to hold everything together while the glue dries, again, I'm using a whole bunch of clamps to just squish everything together. That was one of the harder glue ups I've ever done. Got like blisters all over my hands from screwing those freaking clamps on. But it's looking good. Just tidying up right now, removing the blue tape. You kind of want to remove the blue tape when the glue is still kind of wet. Just taking a wet rag and just cleaning up that glue before it dries. The next step in this build is creating the vertical support pieces. I have this beautiful big piece of walnut, and I'm gonna cut this down. I have this like little table saw jig that I'm gonna clamp it to. I'm gonna run it through my table saw, cut it in half. However, when I first started to cut it on the table saw, it started to pinch the blade, which indicated that this piece is gonna be pretty severely warped. So then I finished the cut with my track saw. So after I cut it with the track saw, I noticed that the pieces are pretty crooked. They're kind of like in the shape of a C. So in order to straighten out these pieces, I'm using my table saw and just trying to force those pieces through in order to create as straight lines as possible. That was like the biggest piece of wood that I've ever had to cut down on my table saw. I think the wood just like wasn't perfectly straight and it was kind of like pinching the blade a little bit. But yeah, really fighting with it. But they look great. Like they're laying on the workbench nice and flat. So now I just have to sand them down with my belt sander. I'm gonna get them nice and square and smooth. And then move into my orbital sander from 60 grit to 220 grit. I can now move on to the dowel, which will act as like the pin that will allow the tabletop to rotate downwards. I have this piece of wood that's ready to be turned into a dowel. I have to figure out like the diameter of it or something. Okay, right now it's 32 millimeters. Okay, so it's like 1.25 inches. I'll probably try to get this down to 1 1/8 inches. So, I just wanted to give an update. We have the dowel, okay, it's looking good. We got the desktop, it's also looking good. I got these two pieces. I just banged these out real quick because these are gonna be acting as the brace in between the vertical supports. And then we have these big vertical support pieces. You may be wondering why there's like this big dowel. The idea is that this dowel is gonna span across the whole length of this desk. I'm gonna drill some holes and then I'm gonna glue the dowel in place. So we're getting there.
Move your head. Look at the size of that boy's head.
So now the dowel's finished, I'm then using a Forstner bit to just drill out some shallow holes in the vertical support pieces. To assemble everything together, I'm using some pocket holes on the horizontal pieces, as well as some wood glue. So I'm using some pipe clamps to hold everything together while I'm attaching the pocket hole screws. Okay, so the desk is pretty well fully put together. However, I'm coming across an issue that I overlooked. The backing board for the desk just sticks out a little bit past the back of the upright support so that when you fold it down, it hits the wall. Can't have this happening, unfortunately. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna shave off a bit of the backing board. I can't take it apart because I've already glued it all together. So I'm gonna have to plane it down. I'm just gonna remove just the back edge and try to round it over with a orbital sander or something. So I finished planing and sanding the back of the desktop. So now this is rounded. And here. So it's rounded so that it clears the back there. For the finish, I'm gonna be using this stuff called Rubio Monocoat. Like every internet woodworker kind of uses this stuff online. It's really good. It's meant for like hardwood floors. It gives a very nice, kind of like a muted, like a natural wood look to it. So some of you are probably wondering how the desktop is gonna stay in an upright position when not in use. It took me a while to figure out what I was gonna do for it exactly, and then I stumbled across this sliding door pin lock mechanism thingy. It has this like cool little chain, which kind of reminds me of like kids with like wallets in the 90s. I'm gonna drill a hole in the side of the wood. This is gonna slide through this faceplate, and it's gonna lock the tabletop in the upright position. I think this is just gonna be like a nice little touch of metal on the side, like a little like piece of jewelry or something. I think the silver's gonna look pretty clean, pretty cool on there. So now it's time to attach the Ikea Ekit units to the top of the desk. And I'm using some cabinet screws that I'm screwing from the inside of the cabinet. And this is just to conceal the screws so that you don't see them on the outside of the support pieces. Hey guys, it's installation day of the desk at Hatley's apartment. I got a haircut over the weekend. But I'm really excited to install the desk and see what it looks like up against the wall and make sure it actually works. Yeah, I'm just gonna pop it into the car and drive it over there. So finally, it's time to install the wall-mounted desk at Hatley's. As you can see, it's an incredibly heavy piece. So I'm gonna wanna go into at least 2 studs. We're gonna have to connect one of the legs to a stud, and then we're gonna have to go into these horizontal support pieces, and then just put the other side into a stud as well. I'm probably gonna use some anchors on the other side just to keep the leg from shifting or something over time, but the real support is gonna come from the screws that are gonna be in the studs. So I've already done the work here and found where the studs are located. You can see here, I've got a stud. And then the other one that we're gonna connect it to is here. It's always gonna go from floor to ceiling. So if you're ever in doubt, just take your stud finder and you just check at different points up and down the wall. If you are in doubt as well, it's always 16 inches off center. Now I'm just gonna put some anchors in the wall on the right side. I'm gonna put some wood screws into the stud on the left side, and then we can secure it permanently. I'm not using wood screws here because it's not going into a stud. Instead, I'm gonna be using some just general wall anchors. And this is just gonna keep the leg on the right side against the wall, but it's not gonna be like structural because I am gonna go into that stud in the center of the unit. I'm just leaving a little bit protruding out of the wall because it just needs to bite into the keyhole. Because it's a keyhole mounting bracket, you kind of have to pop it up and then drop it down. Therefore, like, it's actually quite easy to like remove if you ever want to get rid of it or move it to another apartment or something. So you kind of just want to make sure that your screws are like just the perfect distance away from the wall so that when you do pop it in, when it sits down, it's actually kind of pulling against the screw. Okay, so Noel's gonna come help me. He's gonna grab one side, I'm gonna grab the other, and we're just gonna try to maneuver it into place without scratching the wall too much. Oh, I'm in. Yeah. Okay, you come on my side, because yours is already set. I got 2 out of 4.
It seems like all these are in except for the top.
Yeah, it's the wall's funky. Okay, so the wood is straight, but the wall is kind of like this. We're just gonna back some screws off the wall just a little bit, because we are still securing it into the stud, which is gonna pull it against the wall. And then the screws are still there to support it from like going anywhere. So we're gonna first try to force it into place. If that doesn't work, then we'll back the screws out. I'm recruiting Alana to help me. She's gonna try to push the bottom against the wall while Nolan and I fiddle with the top. There, you're doing like a leg press.
Oh my god. That's Alana's specialty.
We're gonna lift up.
Okay.
Okay?
Ooh, yeah.
Alana, I need you on the right to kick it. Okay, never mind. Mine's not aligned anymore. I'm gonna drop mine down. Ready? 3, 2, 1. It's on there really solid. All 8 anchors are in place, which is great. And then just to keep it from like being bumped, I'm just gonna put some screws in the horizontal support, put it into a stud, and I'll keep it from bouncing around. So now this shouldn't budge off the wall. I'm actually not putting that much pressure on it. I'm gonna put some like WD-40 or something, because there's no metal hinges, it's just a wood dowel in a wood hole. So that's why it's kind of creaking. I almost forgot this finishing touch. I have this little tapered wood plug drill bit that I picked up. They're tapered, so like I'm not using these ones. So these ones I can just really jam into place with some wood glue. Once the wood glue dries, then I can go in with a flush cut saw and just cut it right off, and you probably won't ever know that there was a plug there to begin with. So now it's part of the video where I talk about what I learned, what I could have done differently. Definitely wipe away wood glue before it dries. That should just be a rule of thumb. I've seen some videos on YouTube where people just like let the squeeze out from the wood glue just dry and then they just kind of chisel it away after. Don't do that. You kind of want to wipe away any excess wood glue as soon as possible. Secondly, I should have assembled the desk all together first, just using like clamps to hold everything together rather than just YOLOing it and just gluing and screwing everything together. My heart sank into my stomach when I put it against the wall and I found out that the desk just does not fold down. I was like, what in the heck am I gonna do here? So if you just kind of like rough put everything together before gluing and screwing, it'll just save you so much time in the long run. I think the wall-mounted desk turned out really, really nicely. I love looking at those little inlay wood pieces up close because it's like a nice little detail. The wood grain is just beautiful. The book matched wood grain on either side of the vertical support pieces. It looks really nice in person. And I think this is like a great solution for people that don't have a ton of space in their apartments. Like Hatley, when she wants to use it, she can fold it down, do her thing, put it back up. So overall, I think this has been an awesome project. The contrast between like the super high quality walnut wood that we used and the Ikea units, I just think it's really cool that you can kind of combine them together and create something that's like so unique, so functional. And I'm just thrilled that it's going into a good home and it'll be appreciated. So thanks so much for joining me today. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button and I'll see you next time. Bye.